killed in self-defense. What's your story? Worked for an armed messenger service. Those guys that drop off cash and pick up deposits from banks, businesses, in the armoured trucks. Not even 10 a.m. and I was opening the door to the truck. I saw a huge guy. I'm not tiny, over 6 foot and well proportioned, in the mirror. And just for this thing, get out of the car and run towards me. He put me in a chokehold and started grabbing for my gun. He manhandled me like I weighed nothing. Would have easily gotten the gun if it wasn't an L3 holster. I managed to draw it, press it against him and started pulling the trigger before I blacked out. I have no idea what he would have done if he got the gun, and I'm not used to just being tossed around like that. He turned out to be blind drunk and played for a college football team. An armed robber came into my dad's store while there were customers and employees. There was a shootout and the robber, my dad, and an employee died. Meanwhile, my dead dad is getting sued for not having proper security measures 2 years later. Edit. Because everyone seemed to want to know more. Basically, the employer's family is suing our family, my dad's estate, because they feel that the death was preventable. Yes, the store had the required security measures, and yes, my dad could have just not pulled out his gun, but the robber was assaulting another employee, and he may have thought more people would die if he didn't stop him. The police have stated the footage doesn't show who exactly fired the shot that killed the employee, but it was most likely the robber because of their position in the store. Also, sorry if I misuse any legal terms or seem unknowledgeable about this. I was 16 when it happened, so I'm 18 now. So you can see how I wouldn't have the much information about exactly what happened either. Thanks for all the condolences and information, advice. Kind people. I was with an abusive ex who would come home drunk every night. One night he had a fight. BC, I had my phone on vibrate, and that obviously meant I was sleeping with other people behind his back. He left for a while and came home drunker than I'd ever seen him. He wasn't making coherent sentences, but he lunged at me and wrapped his hand around my neck and sat on my chest. I thought I was going to die. I had some BJJ when I was younger and managed to pull my legs up under his crutch, and then with everything I had, I pushed him off me. He hit his head on the sharp corner of the table we had in the living room and went still. I figured he had been knocked out, so I went outside and called the police. I was going to put his ass in jail. I had the deepest purple bruises in perfect fingerprints form around my neck. He wouldn't have gone to jail. I smoked a cigarette outside, walked back in after I calmed my nerves, just to make sure he wasn't awake and coming for me. He had a huge pool of blood underneath him. I was almost black looking, so I stood there trying to figure out what the fuck I was looking at. Put 2 and 2 together and the rest is history. Years of therapy, self-defense plea, open and shut. Edit. Thanks for the awards, although I'm not sure this deserves them. To answer some questions really quickly, I was toxic and terrible in my early 20s. Had some priors, and I was taken into the police station. To say I was charged would probably be going too far. I wasn't, so I should have worded that better. I simply mean everything was investigated. I did stay in a holidaying facility overnight. Exactly. I live in a town that's less 1,000 people, so it's not like a big city with big smart cops. His mum was in prison and his sister lived in Idaho, so I haven't spoken with either. I was asked not to attend their funeral. I'm so far from a Brazilian jiu-jitsu master that it's insane. Had a very brief brush with it when my brother took it. I was thinking when this assault occurred that the escapant survived. You'd be surprised what you can do when you have an order to live. Not me. Happened to my cousin. He was on a date and his date bumped into her friends. They decided to make it a double date and he went to pick up the friend's boyfriend. The friend's boyfriend tried to rob him while they were driving back. He grabbed the knife from the guy's hand and stabbed him in the neck. He's currently facing trial in Canada for attempted murder. Because apparently if you don't have the right to defend yourself beyond a certain point, you're only allowed to do as much as you can to flee this situation. My cousin was a police officer. He was responding to a domestic where a drunk man was fighting with his wife. The man came out of the house with a gun. My cousin told him to drop it a few times. The man pointed at my cousin, and my cousin emptied his magazine into the man. The man died. Crazy part is, the man was also a police officer. Not my story. I used to work with a guy who was from Chicago. Apparently, he was at a bar and some other guy was being a drunk asshole all night long to him and his friends. They ignored it for the most part until bar close. At bar close, I guess a bunch of people were outside the bar waiting for cabs, figuring out parties and whatnot. When this other guy decided to start shoving the guy I had worked with, the guy swung at him and I guess somehow ended up hitting him in just the perfect place that this dude was out cold and went into a coma. Several days later in hospital he died, and the guy I worked with ended up going to prison for manslaughter. He worked in a different town, nowhere near Chicago, while he was getting through court stuff. He ended up leaving that job to return to Chicago to serve his time. I never found out exactly how long it was sentenced to. This was roughly 8 years ago. I have not seen him since. Edit. He had at least one felony previous to his incident that I know he'd already served prison time for. Edit 2. I'm assuming the reason why he was charged instead of being put simply down self-defense was from the prosecution point of view. It was basically a bar fight that ended up in someone being dead. His life was not threatened. He should have called the cops. It was being physically harassed. Again, this is a form of point of view of prosecution. I like that Mel, you probably would touch to punch. Tossed. And like I commented to somebody below, it definitely makes you think how things can go wrong. Randomly quick, damn quick, by something like this happening when you feel like you're sticking up for self-defense. Gotta keep it cool. No, me, I was born and raised in a tiny town in the Midwest. It's so small we didn't even have a local police officer. The state had to loan us one. The police officer worked a typical 9 to 5 hour Monday to Friday. When he wasn't there, the closest cop was probably over an hour away. One night, a lady's house was broken into. She grabbed her pistol and her phone and called the police. The operator told her to wait until the police arrived the next morning. She stayed in her bedroom and locked the door. The burglar found her bedroom and broke in. She shot every round in the pistol at the guy and killed him. The operator then decided to have the police come over after she killed the guy. After the police investigation, they found rope and tape on him. Happened to my dad. He used to be a cop in New York, honourably discharged Army Ranger. Was on a patrol one night when someone was committing armed robbery at a store. He responded to the call and found the suspect. Started chasing him down the street. Eventually, the suspect turned a corner, and when my dad turned, the suspect fired at him, shooting his kneecap. My dad returned fire and shot, killing the suspect. Turned out it was a 15-year-old kid who stole less than $200. My dad was never be able to return the same. Quit the force and always felt bad. Served in Vietnam, but killing a kid took its toll on him. Luckily, I did not have to shoot, but the gun did save me. I was on my way to visit family. It was probably around 9 p.m. when I decided to fill up on some gas. As I was filming up, a man came saying that he needed some cash because his car was out of gas and his pregnant wife was in it. I asked the car where the car was and he said up the street. However, I saw no car. He could tell I was not buying his story, so he pulled a knife out of his pocket. I can't remember what he said because I immediately pulled out my gun, concealed carry, and told him to back away or I would shoot. He got upset but walked away. I then went inside in the gas station, called the cops.